Jaya Radha Madhava Kunya Bihari. Gaura Premanandi. Jaya Vishnupad Paramahamsa Pravirajikacharya Asto Tanasanta Shri Shriman His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jaya Vishnupad Paramahamsa Pravirajikacharya Asto Tanasanta Shri Shriman His Divine Grace Srila Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Madhava Ki Jai. Shri Panchatattva Ki Jai. Nishingade Bhagavan Ki Jai. Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Maharani Ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Vaishnav Sangha Ki Jai. Gaura Premanandi. All glories to dissembled devotees. All glories to dissembled devotees. All glories to dissembled devotees. All glories, Shri Shri Guru and Garanga. Srila Prabhupada Ki. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So today we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 5, The Cause of All Causes. 2 verses, we're reading 5 and 6, and 6 is on the board. So I'll just read the Sanskrit for 5, the translation and the purport, and then we'll do 6 responsively. So just listen to this. Atman bhavachya setani na para bhavayam svayam atma shaktim avastabhya urna nadbir uvaklamaha. As the spider very easily creates the network of its cobweb and manifests its power of creation without being defeated by others, so also you yourself, by employment of your self-sufficient energy, create without any other's help. So this is Narada speaking to Lord Brahma. Purport. The best example of self-sufficiency is the sun. The sun does not require to be illuminated by any other body. Rather, it is the sun which helps all other illuminating agents. For in the presence of the sun, no other illuminating agent becomes prominent. Narada compared the position of Brahma to the self-sufficiency of the spider, who creates its own field of activities without any other's help, by employment of its own energetic creation of saliva. So now we read text 6. Naham veda param yasmin napanam nashamam vibo namarupa gunarbhavyam sadasat kinchiranyataha. Naham veda param yasmin naparam nasamam vibo namarupa gunarbhavyam sadasat kinchiranyataha. Naham veda param yasmin naparam nasamam vibo namarupa gunarbhavyam sadasat kinchiranyataha. Vaishnavis? Word meanings na, do not. Aham, myself. Veda, no. Param, superior. He, for. Asmin, in this world. Na, neither. Aparam, inferior. Na, nor. Samam, equal. Vipo, O great one. Nama, name. Rupa, characteristics. Gunai, by qualification. Bhavyam, all that is created. Sat, eternal. Asat, temporary. Kinchit, or anything like that. Anyataha, from any other source. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada Ki. Whatever we can understand by the nomenclature, characteristics, and features of a particular thing, superior, inferior, or equal, eternal or temporary, is not created from any source other than that of your Lordship, thou so great. Please repeat. Whatever we can understand by the nomenclature, characteristics, and features of a particular thing, superior, inferior, or equal, eternal or temporary, is not created from any source other than that of your Lordship, thou so great. Purport. The manifested world is full of varieties of created beings in 8,400,000 species of life, and some of them are superior and inferior to others. In human society, the human being is considered to be the superior living being, and amongst the human beings there are also different varieties, good, bad, equal, etc. But Narada Muni took for granted that none of them has any source of generation besides his father, Brahmaji. Therefore, he wanted to know all about them from Lord Brahma. Omigyanattamyandasya janan anjana shalakaya chakshur manitam yena tasmai shri gurave namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapanantikam Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhaktivinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare Jai Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai. So first I just want to take a moment to thank all of the Vaishnavas and Vaishnavis here in this gathering. Very grateful that you're all here serving the Lord, becoming purified, and as that poster said in the early days, with Prabhupada on the cover, save Earth now. So that's our mission. We want to save Earth now. We have a powerful, important mission, so thank you all for that. And I know for certain that without all of you here, I would be totally lost in the material world. So personally, I'm very indebted to every single one of you. And every devotee here that I see, I gain some inspiration. Old devotees, young devotees, new devotees, thin devotees, fat devotees, tall devotees, short devotees, men devotees, women devotees, mother devotees, fathers devotees, sannyasi devotees. You're all inspiring. So thank you very much. Jai Vaishnav Sangha Ki Jai. So in these verses, there's several interesting concepts are explored, so I'll try to discuss a few. I'll admit, when I first looked at the verse, I thought, what am I going to talk about? But I looked at it last night, I woke up this morning, I had some sense of some insight that hopefully you'll find of some value. The first 3 points I want to make. The first is that Narada Muni is learning philosophy and a deeper understanding by his observations of the world around him. You notice in this verse he's making some comparisons to the spider. We'll talk later. He's a little confused who's the source of all the energy. But he's seeing that by observing the world around him, he's comparing Lord Brahma to the spider, who its energy is coming from the spider to create the spider's web. And in the purport, Prabhupada expands a little bit and talks about the best example of self-sufficiency, he says, is the sun. So they're learning from the world around them. I was thinking about this morning. I was walking from Ishodyan, where I'm staying, to the temple, and noticing every morning there's leaves on the ground, right? There's so many nice devotees sweeping up every morning. Every morning more leaves are falling. So I was thinking I'm also falling soon. The leaf is dead, so soon I'll die. So I better be serious about the time that I have. So in this way we should see like that. So we too can learn to be inspired by the world around us. And of course, as Vaishnavas, we also should be very concerned to protect that world. There was a nice presentation yesterday by Keshava Chandra Prabhu about the importance of the environment and ISKCON environmental initiatives, the Green Temple Initiative, etc. So we should be inspired by the world around us, and we're being trained in each of these verses to learn to see Krishna behind all of these things, to see how everything is connected to Krishna. Just like in the Gita, the Lord explains, I'm the light of the sun. So when we see the sun, we should be reminded of Krishna. And he says that he gives the juice, the moon, it's coming from him. The energy of the moon, it's coming from Krishna. He says of fishes, I am the shark. So we should think like that. When we see a fish, right, a lot of fish in Bengal, we should think, well, you're just the little brother of the shark, which is the big brother, which represents Krishna. So even you see a fish, we can think of Krishna. It says, of bodies of water, I am the ocean. So when we go to the ocean, we can think of Krishna. And we should think, my Lord is so great. All of these manifestations are so great. Let me surrender to him and let me serve to him. In this way, everything, every moment can be a reminder like that. Just like we get up, where would we be? Just like when there's a few more devotees in here and the temperature gets a little warmer, sometimes you think, where's the oxygen? Isn't it? I have one advantage of being tall. I get a little bit more oxygen. But don't be jealous, because the bad karma when you're tall, when you go to people's homes, you're the only one who sees all the dirt on top of their refrigerator. So it has advantages, but it also has disadvantages. But when there's no oxygen, we think, Krishna, you're the oxygen. I need the oxygen. I need Krishna. Oxygen's coming from him. So as Vaishnavas, we should be careful we don't divorce ourselves from these things, but we should see everything in relationship to Krishna and use everything for Krishna. In the Lilamrita, there's one nice little story, millions of stories there, a nice story. In the early days, the devotees in San Francisco, they had a cookout and a kirtan on the Pacific Ocean. They built a fire and they were chanting, having kirtan. And at the end, Prabhupada did the Premadwani prayers, and at the end he said, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati ki jai, this ki jai, that ki jai, Pacific Ocean, ki jai. Prabhupada said like that. Because he's seen, this is all the mercy of Krishna. Krishna's brought us here together, this nice place to chant, have kirtan, be in association with devotees. So we should be careful as Vaishnavas to remember our philosophy is not to falsely renounce things of this world, but to use everything carefully. Because it's like, right, the other Prabhupada said, like a razor's edge. You have to use the material energy, but be very careful of the material energy. If we have a family, so many families in Krishna consciousness today, so many families. So we Krishnaize our family. We don't renounce our family. You know, some rare people have become sannyasi later on. The wife says, okay, enough of you, go preach, something like that. But we want to Krishnaize our family. We may have a spouse, so that relationship, we should Krishnaize it. We should love our spouse. We should serve our spouse. We should care for our spouse. And we should give them Krishna. If we have money, we Krishnaize our money. I was speaking with some of the devotees that are businessmen just yesterday. They're very enthusiastic to make money. That's fantastic. We all know the story. Prabhupada was told there was one guru, sannyasi, whatever, when they bring him money, his hands would go behind his back. Right? And Prabhupada would say, you bring me money, my hands go like this. For Krishna. So we engage everything for Krishna. If one's a sannyasi, you have to be careful. You can start thinking, I'm a sannyasi for me. I'm a sannyasi. Oh, now everybody bows down to me. Now I have influence for me. No. You're sannyasi because you've proven you're the best servant. Now continue to live like that and teach the rest of us. We grihastas, we need your example. So that's one point. Be careful. That's Narada is showing us. See everything in connection with Krishna. Never forget its connection with Krishna. Don't falsely renounce the world. Embrace the world and give it to the Lord. So second point, very interesting. In these verses, Narada Muni is completely wrong. He's glorifying Brahma. His misplaced devotion. Oh, you're the source of everything, just like the spider manifests. We're going to learn in a few verses, the Lord Brahma is going to correct him. But right now, Narada is wrong. He completely has it wrong. And Srila Prabhupada, later in one of his purports, he explains, how is this possible that Narada Muni could have it wrong? And he gives the parallel, just like in the Bhagavad Gita. Arjuna was bewildered by Krishna just so that the whole Bhagavad Gita discussion could be there for our benefit. So he explains in a similar way, Narada Muni was misunderstanding to teach us. But the point is, because every single, Prabhupada said just one word someone reads, they become benefited in so many ways. So every history here, every story, every point has so much meaning. So we should think, if Narada Muni can be bewildered, of course, again, his is by Krishna's plan. If Narada can be wrong, I can also be wrong. We have to think like that. Sometimes we have a tendency to think I can't be wrong, or that everyone else is wrong, my idea is right. But we always have to be open to correction as Vaishnavas. Always have to be open for correction. We may get, just like we've all met people from different religious communities, they get a little bit of insight about God, and they push. You know, like in my countries, there's some Christians. I have some many Christian friends that are wonderful, very deep spiritual people. But sometimes you meet people that are a little, they're a little overly enthusiastic for their level of realization. One time when I first moved to Washington, D.C., I met a priest at the National Catholic Cathedral, and he went to use the washroom, and while I was waiting, some elderly lady came up to me and started explaining to me how Jesus was Lord and I should surrender to him. And my friend, the priest, came out of the bathroom. He was so embarrassed. He pulled me away and said, "I'm so sorry." I said, "It's no problem. We have some like that also." So we should have our enthusiasm based on what we know. Krishna gives us some revelations, but we all know every day, every week, every month he gives us new revelations. And a lot of times it's things that help us understand what I knew before wasn't so good. So we should always be ready for improvement. If we don't have that mood, then how can we improve? We know in the Gita, Krishna says the first quality of knowledge is humility. So if we don't have that humility, then I can always improve. I always need to learn more. How are we going to improve? If we think we're full, how can I learn to do better? But our philosophy of Krishna is unlimited. We'll never know everything there is to know about Krishna. If we're open, there's more and more and more to learn about Krishna, always, eternally. So, just like right now we're coming out of this corona pandemic, but I was thinking actually there's a much worse pandemic in Kali Yuga, which is the pandemic of arrogance. It's everywhere. Everyone's infected by it. And as soon as you become infected by it, or because we're infected by it, everybody wants to fight. I know so much, I'm so great. And as Vaishnavas here, these instructions are there for us to understand it. There's no place for that in spiritual society. Lord Chaitanya taught us we should be lower than the straw in the street. And that doesn't just mean, we touch people's feet now and then. If they step on us, you touch their head and go away, and then, no. It means we have to develop that mentality that we're servant to the servant to the servant. And therefore, we have to be very careful to weed out different types, as Prabhupada would say, so many isms come in. Just like nationalism. Like they talk these days, there's the Hindu nationalists, and then there's Christian nationalists, and there's Jewish nationalists, and there's Muslim nationalists. All of these things we have to always remember, no, these are impurities in my realization that I'm spirit soul. I'm a servant of God, and these things are all false understanding. I'm actually the servant of the servant of the servant. And any other conceptions of who I am other than the servant of Krishna. And if I see other people as any other category other than the servant of Krishna, I'm an illusion to one extent or the other. Of course, to live in this world, you have to make some distinctions. You can't, of course, these days in America, it's very confused. But in most parts of the world, if you're wearing a dhoti, you go in the men's bathroom. If you have a sari, you go in the ladies' bathroom. You have to discriminate some things, but don't take it too far. The basic things we can discriminate against, obviously. But Lord Chaitanya himself said, I'm not a sannyasi, I'm not a Brahman, I'm not a Vaishya, I'm the servant of the servant of the servant. So we have to keep that in mind, that always be ready for correction, and that we'd always maintain a mood of humility. Because if we don't, if we shut that down, just so we know, Chanakya Pandit, one of his very nice expressions, we should take good instruction even from a fool. That's pretty strong. That's to make it really clear. Even from a fool, we should take good instructions. But if I'm thinking, no, I'm a Prabhupada disciple, how can I learn from this other disciple? I'm a sannyasi, how can I learn from a grasta? I'm a man, how can I learn from a woman? I'm a woman, how can I learn from a man? How can I learn from my children? If we're thinking like that, we're going to block off the process of progress. And our movement's all about making more and more and more progress. So we have to be very careful this pride doesn't come in, this arrogance. The whole world is burning under pride and arrogance. Thinking this is my land, this is my place, let me take it. So the third point I wanted to make, maybe the most interesting one. It's interesting to see that Narada Muni here, as this story develops, right now he's kind of glorifying, he is glorifying Lord Brahma, you're the source of everything, and how great thou art. Sounds like a Christian, sounds like a Protestant prayer. How great, there is a prayer, like song like that, how great thou art. So Narada Muni's, he's planting the seed for later Protestant hymns. But he's misunderstanding, as I mentioned, Brahma's position. But as the story goes on, then he kind of expresses a few doubts. I've been glorifying you as the supreme, but I'm kind of wondering, you seem occasionally to be performing austerities. Can you explain that to me? Now, it's very important to keep this in mind, what's going on here. Because he's expressing, I have some doubts about you. Now, I was born in America. It's not the most cultured place, but sometimes very descriptive with their language. So if I can put in an American type of language, what he's really saying, are you a big shot or not? That's basically what he's saying. I thought you were numero uno, but there seems to be something else going on here. Would you kindly clear that up for me? Would you kindly clear up that doubt? So what I found reading this, what's most important about that is how Brahma reacted. Narada is his son, Narada is his disciple, Narada is his junior in every way. And how did Brahma, when he said, hey, who are you, what are you doing, how powerful are you, he challenged him in a nice way, but he really challenged him. So how did Brahma respond to that challenge? To a junior person saying, who the heck are you? What are you doing? Did he say quiet? Did he say that? It's coming up yet. I'll give you a little advance, right? He said quiet. Who are you, Narada? Is that what he said? Or hey, buddy, I'm your father. Don't talk to me like that. Right? He's not going to respond like that. Or that's an offense. Or again, a nice Americanism, shut up. That's not how he responded. Narada is going to respond in a very humble way. After all this, Narada Muni is going on and on, but Brahma is going to respond, yes, I'm the servant of the servant of the servant. I'm Krishna's servant. I'm God. You're right. There's something much higher than me. And I am the servant. And don't misunderstand my position. Don't misunderstand my position. Early in ISKCON years, there was one of the many crises that we passed through. There were some very senior leaders in our society that started preaching Prabhupada's God. Prabhupada's God. And Prabhupada became, this is a long story, Prabhupada became so disturbed he had them leave, told them to go out and preach, wrote everybody, said don't listen to them, etc. Prabhupada corrected, I'm the servant of God. Later, quite a few years later, Jayadvaita Swami, a very important discussion with Srila Prabhupada. He asked him, Prabhupada, how is it that the pure devotee, there was only one, how is it that the pure devotee sometimes seems to make mistakes? Quotes the wrong verse, or where did I leave my glasses, or something like that. Just paraphrasing. It's there. You can find that quote. And again, paraphrasing, Prabhupada said, no, it's not like that. That's not what perfection is. Perfection is that the pure devotee does everything for Krishna. That's the perfection. The pure devotee does everything for Krishna. And we know Prabhupada said to the GBC, it's interesting also, Prabhupada said the governing body commission, we all know the history, and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur wanted the Gaudiya Math to stay together, and they had trouble agreeing to work together cooperatively, so Prabhupada created the GBC before he left, and he said the GBC is the ultimate managing authority. Very strong. It's in the will. But he said something else too. He said, none of you are very intelligent. Right? So we're the, whoever serves on the GBC, I'm there right now. There'll be so many people over the next so many centuries, and so many much more advanced devotees than I am serving there for many years. So Prabhupada said, none of you are very intelligent. But he said, together you're intelligent. Together there's some intelligence. So he was also showing we have to be very aware of our position. And that means, just as Prabhupada did, we have to be open, just like we're seeing this story from Brahma. We have to be open to be questioned, Vaishnavas in general, especially leaders, whatever status of leadership we have. We have to open to be questioned and open to be corrected, all of us. If our name is Bhakta Fred, you better be ready to be corrected, because everybody's going to correct you. When I was a Bhakta leader years ago under Srimad Prabhu, who's there somewhere in the back, and we had a rule that only the Bhakta leader could correct the new Bhaktas, because we didn't have that rule all day long. Don't put your feet there. Don't touch this. Don't do this. They'd last about 6 hours. And they would think this place is like a jail. Too many rules. And devotees were very enthusiastic sharing the rules, but if you didn't, you can only take so much medicine at a time. Jai Shishirada Madhava Ki. So we had a rule like that, not too much. So if we're a bhakta, if we're a temple president, if we're a GBC, there's a lot of GBCs here. If we're a guru, there's a lot of gurus here now. Siksha gurus, Diksha gurus. There's sannyasis here, Prabhupada disciples, senior disciples of the next generation. All of us have to be in the mood that, as Prabhupada told the GBC, I'm not so intelligent. I'm not so intelligent. I need to learn. I need to be open. I need to be prepared to be corrected. And if we have that mood, the Lord can always teach us. But as soon as we tend to think, I know everything, or I know more than you, the whole process shuts down. Our whole process is based on hearing and chanting. As soon as we think, I've heard enough, now I can chant, we're in trouble. If we think, well, what can I hear from you? Then we're in trouble. Or I'm so advanced, I don't need to hear from you, I'm in trouble. One of the things that I do in my service is I attend these things called anti-cult meetings. And yeah, they're still there. Those who've been around, those guys are still there. And they study group dynamics, and they try to focus on what can go wrong in societies, religious societies, cultural societies, political societies, so many things. And a few years ago, there was a session on a Catholic group. They have things on different ones, but big organization. I mentioned the Catholics in particular because it's a very old, very large organization. But within this, there was one subcategory called the Legionnaires of Christ. And in this particular group, they took vows, just like we take vows. I chant 16 rounds, follow regular principles, etc. So they also take vows. One of their vows was, because I think they're finished now. One of their vows was, I will not criticize or question my authorities. That's a vow they took. Sounds like a great vow, doesn't it? It's like Vaishnav culture, right? A lot of classes on Vaishnav etiquette. I can't question I can't criticize my authority. Guess what happened? It became a cesspool of abuse. An absolute cesspool of abuse. Because you're seeing something happen by the priest, by the bishop, by somebody in authority, you can't speak up. Because I took a vow. We don't take that vow. We don't take that vow. We differently we understand that we're coming from a very conditioned state. Isn't it? I don't know about anybody else here, but my mind is not my friend. Confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita. My mind is in a million places thinking a lot of not very nice things. And my senses tend to pull me towards a lot of nice things. My tongue wants to speak not nice things. I like to hear not nice things. So I'm in training, and I need all of you to hold me accountable as a devotee. And I would put forward that all of us need to be held accountable, and therefore we need to create a culture that is accountable and is transparent. And sometimes in the mood of promoting Vaishnava etiquette, we misunderstand that that means secrecy, or that means I respect someone so much I can't question. That's not our culture. If you respect me, you question me. Anuttama, I just saw you do this. Why did you do that? Hopefully you won't ask me too many times a day. I have other things to do. But if there's that many things to question me on, question me all day long. That's the culture that we need to create. In a respectful way. In a respectful way. We cannot have a culture, sometimes they have this expression, don't ask, don't tell. Don't ask, don't tell. That's like a mafia code practically. You know? What happened to so-and-so? The body disappeared. Well, don't ask and don't tell. You know, that's not our culture. Our culture is based on openness. And it's based on openness because we understand that I need help to advance in Krishna consciousness. As soon as we start thinking, I've got it all figured out, okay, like when we had our first Vaishnava Christian dialogue, I think I've told this story here before. Very briefly, it was in Boston, and we had a lot of very big Christian scholars, including some friends of our movement, Dr. Gordon Melton, Dr. Larry Shin, Dr. Frank Clooney, others. And the topic was the kingdom of God. And I chose the topic because I thought, wow, we got a lot to say. And they don't have so much to say. So, you know, we're going to show them something like that. So at one point, we're going around the room about, you know, what are your particular... And all the Vaishnavas were talking about, well, I'm so inspired because I know Krishna's a person. He plays a flute and he wears a peacock feather and he's beautiful. He plays the cowherd boys and his 5 rasas. And, wow, we were really showing them. And then it came around. I remember Dr. Larry Shin at one point. This was 1996. And Dr. Larry Shin, he said, you know, my tradition, we don't know that much about the kingdom of God, frankly. It's there. It's a nice place. I want to go there. But for me, what really matters is if I'm manifesting the kingdom of God in this world. Are creating that culture within our communities of respect for others, of love for others, being free from jealousy, free from hankering, free from arrogance, respecting the celibate priests, respecting the women, respecting the men, respecting the children. That's what matters to me. And as he was saying that, I felt myself sinking into the couch. Because I was thinking, we're not doing so good on those things. We're not doing so good. And thank you for telling me that. Thank you for pointing that out to me, because we need to learn this better. There's another dialogue we do in India, South India. One year, one of the Christian scholars, he was there like the second, third day. A very scholarly kind of person. Like if he was a Westerner, he would have like tomato sauce on his lapel. Those of you that know professors, you know, they're very transcendental people, but the mundane things, like, they're not so good at, you know. So after like a day of the dialogue, he said, you know, I've been realizing, he said, we Christians, we talk a lot about how God loves us, right? That's their whole meditation, Jesus, the Son of God, came into this world, was sacrificed on the cross. They really have a sense how God sacrificed to them. He said, we Christians know how God loves us. He said, you Vaishnavas, you know how to love God. It was really a beautiful moment. And do we need both? We need both. Can we learn from each other? We can learn from each other. So what to speak of people outside the community, how much we need to learn from each other. Like sometimes, maybe like as a man or as a brahmachari, as a sannyasi, sometimes we may think, well, I'm advanced, and sometimes we think it's the wrong way to think, but sometimes we think, what can I learn from the ladies? Well, of course, many of them are great scholars and pundits, and they teach us, and they're so, when I was a temple president, the women had distributed more books than anybody, right, Savas? They were the biggest book distributors. The head pujari was a woman, the head cook was a woman, the best book distributors were women, the people bringing in the money were women. It's not always there every place, but it's there in some places. But at least we can see, look how this lady is caring for her daughter or her son. If I only had that much devotion to Krishna. It's like we see the spider, we see the sun, we see the shark. So we should learn from each other in so many different ways. We have to. So if we're friends, which we all are, if we're fellow servants, then we have to point out in a proper way. We have our etiquette is essential. But in a proper way, we also need to be ready we have to create a culture that's open to talking to each other about how we can improve, of how we can create systems of checks and balances within our society. We're getting bigger. We're getting richer. We're getting more influential. We're getting more powerful, which means we're getting more tempted. You can't mess things up too much if there's only a few of you. You can't mess things up if nobody listens to you. You can't mess things up if you have no money, if you have no influence. But the more influence they have, the more power, then that's a wonderful opportunity, but it's also a great danger. So we have to be careful of that danger. Just like now, there's a CPO, I get it wrong sometimes, I think it's PLMO, the Pastoral Leadership Misconduct Office. There's a justice ministry now. Why do we need those things? It's not a weakness that we need those things. It's a strength that we realize we have to have those things to protect us, to keep an eye on us, to ask us, how well are we doing? Just like the GBC, okay? All those guys on top of the roof, they're actually some nice people, in case you're wondering. I can vouch. They're all nice people, actually. Very dedicated, very hardworking. And the governing body this year in Mayapur said, we don't have enough training on child protection. 3 hours. The whole meetings were cut to 5 days for various reasons. We only had 5 days. 3 hours, that's a whole session. Out of 10, 1/10 of the whole meeting, child protection. Why? Because there's been abuse. We've had child abuse in our society. We need to recognize it. We need to shine a light on it. We need to fix it. We need to minimize it. And we all have a responsibility. So if we allow ourselves to think, well, we don't have these problems, don't ask, don't tell, then they just fester. It's like if you're cleaning your house, and your spouse says, did you clean behind the couch? Don't ask. How clean's the room going to be? Or you say to your son or daughter, did you make your bed? Mommy, I got to go now. No, did you make your bed? We have to shine light in these things. So if we don't do that, then we add to the problems. In fact, if we don't do that, we are the problem. We become the problem. We don't want to be like the legionnaires of Christ. You take a vow, you can't question anything. You can't criticize anything. Criticizing for the sake of pulling down is harmful. But to critique something for the sake of how we can do better, that's service. And if we actually want to see ISKCON continue to grow and have the effect upon the world that we want it to have, we have to create that type of culture of transparency and honesty that Prabhupada wanted us to have, that the Bhagavad Gita tells us we should have. And like, again, not to quote too much from my Christian friends, but there's a nice expression they have. We all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. We also have all sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. We have our sinful nature. We have our wonderful ecstatic nature, and you're all worshipful Vaishnavas for me. At the same time, we should think at least among ourselves and as a community. We have shortcomings individually and as a community. And the solutions start, just like Narada. Brahma, can you shine a little light on this? I'm a little confused what your position is. I'm a little confused how the world works. I'm a little confused. Have you overstepped your boundaries? And Brahma's going to say, no, actually, you got it wrong. But let me tell you, we're all in this together. We're all servants. Start with that premise that we're all servants. So, if we maintain this mood of acknowledging our shortcomings, individually and collectively, if we maintain this mood of being open to correction and not falling into this misunderstanding, he's a Prabhupada disciple, I can't question what he's doing. She's a senior lady, I can't question what she's doing. He's a GBC, I shouldn't ask. You know, you see Anuttama walking down to the Ganges with a little boy or girl, you damn well better stop me. We have to have that standard. And not just because we're trying to tear each other down, because we need to protect each other. Because Maya is too powerful. And we have a very, very sacred mission to fulfill. And if we don't, sometimes devotees think, other people think too, sometimes we think, well, we don't want to talk about these things. You know, if we talk about that we have problems, we're going to scare people away. What kind of people will be scared away? People that don't think. People that don't think want to be in a society where you don't ask, you don't tell. People that think, they want to be in a society that's self-critical. How are we doing? Could we be doing better? Have we made mistakes? How can we fix those mistakes? How do we make sure we don't make those mistakes in the future? And this is especially important for our younger generation. You know, some of us were getting pretty old. And we like devotees just to appreciate, boy, they made a lot of sacrifices, and we did. We also made our fair share of mistakes. That's okay. That's what it means to be human. But the younger people especially want to see if you fix those mistakes, you're honest about those mistakes, you're honest about your own limitations. And if we're not, we're just going to get a bunch of yes men. And we're going to break in a bunch of little cults, frankly. We're going to break in a bunch of, I like him, I like her, I like him. We're here to worship Prabhupada, who's a pure devotee who engaged everybody in his movement, who brought everybody all around the world. He went to Africa 5 times. 5 times he went to Africa. And when he went there, criticized his disciples. He said, why are you only preaching these Indian people? Of course, we want to preach to Indian people. They're wonderful. But in Africa, you know, there's a few more black people. So Prabhupada said, go you preach to them. So we have to be open. We have to be transparent. We have to be accountable. And if we are, our movement will be very successful. Very, very successful. We'll weed out all the shortcomings that are there. And we've seen right here in this community, when we don't have a system of accountability, when we don't have transparency in a respectful way, we are opening the door for horrendous behavior and things that undermine the faith in the entire community here and around the world. We have to learn from that. We make mistakes, that's okay. We learn from it, we do better, and we make sure it doesn't happen again. We have to do that. We have to do that. So in summary, 3 lessons from here, the ones that I saw. First, we should learn from the world, learn from the sun, learn from the spider, as they're particularly pointed out here, and be inspired by this world because we see Krishna. We see Krishna's potency, and we Krishnaize everything. Second thing, to be humble and to always be open to correction, as Narada was when he realized he wasn't completely understanding things, that he actually was wrong. So we're ready to be corrected in that way. And then the third thing, that as a society, we really understand that we have to create a culture of openness and transparency and accountability. Now, it may manifest in slightly different ways in different cultures. You know, not everyone's going to be like the way the Americans do it, etc. But the bottom line has to be accountability and transparency for every single one of us. Because people walk in that door and they want to know what, you know, what's... But he just had this beautiful ceremony for all the book distributors from Mayapur outside. They go out, work hard, and so many book distributors around the world millions and millions of books. Why? To get people to come here. And then they come here, then it's phase 2. Now please become a part of our beautiful society. But what if we don't have a beautiful society? How long are they going to stay? You know, how long are they going to stay? Not very long. They may have every book. They'll stay home and read the books. That's nice. But better they come here and get inspired for our beautiful society. So let's, just like we know Prabhupada, because of his purity, so we are all attracted. Everybody was attracted because of Prabhupada's purity. We have to try to reflect that in our communities, in our hearts, and how we live, and be open to be able to say, we made some really serious mistakes. Let's fix it and not let it happen again. Not that, did you have a mistake? No mistake. What happened here? Well, nothing happened there. According to our level of responsibility in the community, sometimes we need to know more about what mistakes are there, but so we can fix them, because we have more potency. But each and every one of us, we have to be open and accountable, ready to hear from others, how can I do better? And never think that because I'm a Vaishnava, there's nobody can give me instruction. Because I'm a Vaishnava, I live on hearing instruction. Chanakya said, from a fool. We should walk out that door every day thinking, where's more instruction? Give me more instruction. Krishna, teach me how to be better. Teach me how to be more pure. Teach me how to be more humble. Never that I've reached a point I'm sufficient. I'm only sufficient by Prabhupada's grace. My sufficiency is his mercy. Jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So there's a few minutes if there's any questions or comments. Maybe he wants to stay. Maybe Brahma and then here. Brahma Hurta Prabhu?
How do you define sin? Can one say that sin is
sin is breaking the laws of Krishna, right?
Can you define them? Can one say sin equals abuse?
I would say abuse is one form of sin. I mean, in one sense, you could say, you know, if you abuse the planet, that's sinful. If you abuse other people, it's sinful. If we abuse ourselves, it's sinful. Abuse is definitely sinful, if that's the point. You know, there may be other forms of sin that aren't abuse, but in one sense, they're probably all abuse. We're abusing something if it's a sin.
I came to the conclusion there is no other sin than that.
You're probably right. I have to think about it a little bit more, but yeah, that's an important point. Again, how can we abuse anything if we're devotees? If we know everything belongs to Krishna, everything's Krishna's energy, you know. My wife's not my wife. She's Krishna's daughter. My husband's not my husband. I mean, we have these roles we play. He's Krishna's son. My children are Krishna's children. That tree is Krishna's tree. These people outside the gate, they're Krishna's devotees. People inside the gate are Krishna's devotees, like that. Okay, the mic is going over there. The microphone, Ishvar, is in the back of the room. So, yeah, go ahead, Prabhu. And then we'll come up here.
Thank you, Anuttama Prabhu. Really appreciate this class. Would you kindly tell us if this ethos of openness, accountability, transparency can be made into a GBC resolution?
Easily, but more important is that I make it into the resolution in my heart. I write a lot of resolutions from time to time, but they're only so good as they filter down. But we can certainly consider something like that. Maybe if we need to state it, it's sad, but maybe we need to say something like that. But more important is, really, I'm not trying to be trite, more important is that it becomes part of our culture. If there's an obstacle because people don't understand it, then maybe we need some resolution, but more important is down below. I think you're already a GBC member because you have a follow-up question. That's very typical in the GBC. I have a follow-up question. Okay, one more follow-up question.
I agree that it must enter our hearts, but sometimes for it to enter our hearts, we need to see it in black and white and put it up there as a resolution so that it actually becomes the ethos. If we have to survive, not just survive, but thrive and flourish, there's no other way out.
I will work on that resolution.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Then we have here. And then we had Maharaj over here. He was really early, so we'll go here and then we'll definitely get to Maharaj. Right here and then one more.
Srila Prabhupada says a lot of things.
Yeah.
So
Millions of words. Actually, it's millions. Yeah.
So sometimes there's an issue, and somebody, and both opposing points have a lot of backing, lots of quotes from Srila Prabhupada, and that completely.
Of course, we haven't seen that in any recent discussions within ISKCON, but it probably is true sometimes.
With chocolate, for instance, we offer chocolate. Haribol Prabhu says, well, I gave chocolate to Prabhupada in 1972, and he said it was very nice. Then Jai Prabhu says, well, we tried to serve chocolate in Krishna Balaram Mandir in 1976. And Prabhupada said that it's prohibited in ISKCON. So sometimes when you have two opposing viewpoints and then there's a stack of Prabhupada quotes to back up each one, how does somebody ascertain what Prabhupada is?
Well, I'm just, I happen to be sitting here in front of the microphones. All of you could reflect on that. My thought would be, first and foremost, we have to maintain a culture of respect. Because we're going to have differences of opinion. I read a purport just the other day. Prabhupada was saying that to think there won't be differences, to think there'll be utopia, is impersonalism. He said, because we're persons, there's always going to be some differences. There's always going to be difference of opinions. Like maybe some devotees from Germany, I haven't been in a few years, but it's interesting. You go to Germany, I'll give you advance, you can be prepared. There's bread for breakfast, there's bread for lunch, there's bread for dinner. And if you want a late night snack, it's bread. There's other things too, but that's there. You come here, and we stand in line to get prasadam. You have to see who's serving. If it's Bengali, you better watch how much rice he puts on your plate. It's going to be, pretty big. So there's always going to be differences, but if we maintain a culture of respect, we can discuss and dialogue those things, and we can come to a deeper understanding. And sometimes it means we might agree to disagree on how we understand what Prabhupada taught. And for more on that, there's a beautiful hermeneutics course that was put together by the Sastric Advisory Council, Chairperson Urmila Prabhu. And it's a fantastic course about how do we understand sometimes when there's some differences of what Prabhupada instructs. What's the time, place, and circumstance? How can we learn from that? But the main thing is we don't want to have a society with the pro-chocolate, the anti-chocolate, throwing chocolate at each other in the middle of the, That won't help anybody. Part of it is like, Prabhu, I've always heard we shouldn't eat chocolate. Can you help me understand why you think it's okay to eat chocolate, as using your example? Okay, we have to maintain that mood, and then we can help each other. So one last question Maharaj has back here. By the way, I think the official guideline is better to not eat chocolate, but it's not a law as far as I know. It's just a guideline, since you brought it up.
Hare Krishna. So, can you please tell us what is an offense? What is a sin? Is the offense automatically a sin, or is a sin not necessarily an offense?
How would you answer that? I mean, seriously, you're a sannyasi, you travel, you get those questions all the time. I'll reflect after.
Offense, usually it's a little bit higher than sin.
Higher than sin?
Because you have to ask, if you offend a Vaishnava, you cannot atone by chanting Hare Krishna Mahamantra. You have to ask forgiveness.
Thank you for illustrating a really important point. We should not offend a Vaishnava. At the same time, we should understand sometimes Vaishnavas are very, very offensive to other living beings. And at that point, the aura fades. And especially for those in leadership, they must be corrected. We must protect our members. We must maintain the sanctity of the society. So, you see me do something wrong, please correct me. If I do something seriously wrong, you need to separate me so that I don't hurt anybody else. I think that's something we sometimes forget, We should, it's in the Gita, right? We should overlook small offenses. It's our culture, but sometimes we've taken that instruction too far sometimes. And we think, well, I shouldn't see, again, don't ask, don't tell. But no, we know what the standards of behavior are for Vaishnavas, for sannyasis, we know what the standards of behavior are. And if somebody's violating that, proper etiquette, okay, you go through the channels, A quick example, a few years ago, there was a devotee, sannyasi guru, who was living in a holy place, not that far from here, on the other side of the country. And disciples were seeing there's things wrong here. He's a sannyasi, but there's a lady who's spending more time than she should. We're coming to see him, and there's a lady, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the disciples, first of all, proper etiquette, approached him, Maharaj, this doesn't seem to be right. No, you don't understand. Okay. Then when it didn't get better, they approached the GBC. The GBC said, Maharaj, this is absolutely not right. No, you don't understand. It's like this, it's like that, it's like this. We investigate his total nonsense. So, now he's out of ISKCON because it was unacceptable behavior. But saying, don't ask, don't tell. We need to look and we need to ask and we need, in a proper way, we need each other. There's another expression, but for the grace of God, there go I. We can't walk around and think, I'm impervious to Maya's effect. I'm impervious to the degree the devotees are with me, they're protecting me, and they're keep an eye on me. We need the devotees to keep an eye on
each other.
Save each other. Yeah. Prabhupada's not here physically to chastise us right now. We need, that's part of our, not that we run around chastising each other. We worship other devotees. We serve other devotees. We respect other devotees. As like I opened up, we're so dependent on other devotees. At the same time, like you love your brother, you serve your brother, you respect your brother, but if he does something criminal or sinful, you can't just say, well, it's my brother, I'm not going to notice. If for no other reason, because if I don't notice, he's going to do it to somebody else, whatever he did. So we have to have that kind of culture.
Gracias.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, should we stop? There was another hand over here, but should we do one more? Sorry, you're my elder. One more?
Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you, very good class. But one thing I would like to understand, because
in communications we teach everybody you'd never say that. It was very nice, but.
Yeah.
What that basically means is it wasn't nice. This is my real point.
No, this,
so
this
here's
is
what you
nice,
listen.
but there is
wait,
a confusion.
Little correction. Very nice class, and. Then you can tell me everything that was wrong.
Thank you for correction.
Yeah.
So, the point is that from the beginning, like I can say for myself, I am convinced that Srila Prabhupada's statements are beyond any type of discussion or, correction or so. But I find that these things are happening now, and in that discussions, even the neophyte and newcomers, even they also start passing some conclusions and statements on Srila Prabhupada's statements and Srila Prabhupada's commentary. So that is very, very dangerous for the movement and for ourselves also.
Yeah, thank you. Those of you that can't see his face, his body language, this is causing him great anxiety. Thank you for that feeling. I would suggest a couple things. One, you should take the hermeneutics course.
That is what created this, because I attended that course, and in that course I saw that Srila Prabhupada's statements are discussed like this, and anyone and everyone is commenting on Srila Prabhupada's statements. That's very risky.
Which course did you take?
I was in VIH's class, and there was hermeneutics discussion going on.
Did you stay for the whole course?
Yes, I stayed.
Okay. All right, well, I had a different experience. I took it twice because I thought there's so much information for me to understand here. I really need to understand it clearly. Maybe you can put the mic down, because I just want to say, and if you interrupt again, we'll be here all day. Prabhupada said many, many things, And Prabhupada did sometimes appear to contradict himself. It's there. Prabhupada said, you don't, so many examples are there, how we dress in Western clothes and this and that. And he changed later, was given more information. So we need sometimes to have a system of how do we understand the words of our founder Acharya that we don't misinterpret. We need to have a system how we can study Prabhupada's writings, because if we don't have a system of how do we study it, then we may misinterpret. We may take one little piece, one little expression from one place, and that becomes like our total Siddhanta. We're not understanding he said different things in different times in different places. So how do we balance those things? I'll give an example. There are some people, I've heard recently, there are some devotees that say, we just study what Prabhupada put in his books. What Prabhupada wrote in letters, what Prabhupada said in lectures is not so important. But those of you that were around in those early days, Prabhupada would write a letter. There were no books. His letters were the books. Everybody would read those letters. Now, if it's a specific letter, a specific person, maybe that doesn't apply in all circumstances. But his letters, his other teachings, those are Shastra for us. We shouldn't think, well, this is Prabhupada, what Prabhupada put as a book, and this is different. Prabhupada is a book. Prabhupada's life is a book. Every word is a book. And sometimes in different circumstances, he would say different things. Prabhupada, just end with this, it's too late. But Prabhupada gives sannyasi to a few devotees. He would say to one sannyasi, he would say, okay, now you're sannyas, you have to leave, you have to travel, you have to preach. Then he'd turn and say, now you're sannyas, give up everything, stay here, manage. Somebody think, oh, total contradiction. Well, we need hermeneutic. Why did Prabhupada say it like that? What does that mean? What was the time, place, and circumstance? So that's the idea. So we should stop. Otherwise, if you don't get to take prasadam, you're all going to be cursing me. That's not good. I need your blessings, not your curses. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.